Hey guys, it's Chris. From a grisly discovery in a Jersey woman's backyard to an actual underground society found beneath the streets of Moscow, here are 10 incredible things found underground. Number 10. Underground Nazi Bunker. Our first discovery takes us to Hitler's famous Atlantikwall, a 3,000-mile stretch of bunkers and tunnels that run all the way from northern Norway to the south of France. This enormous defensive wall was built by the German Nazi dictator in 1942 as a way to keep out allies from invading Europe. Obviously, this didn't really work, but it was one impressive project. Most of the bunkers and tunnels have been hidden underground since the war, but more and more are being discovered all the time. Back in 1942, there were over 870 bunkers, all of different shapes and sizes, and each of them constructed with reinforced concrete. Today, around 470 of them can be found near the Dutch capital, which is one of the most strategically important places to have defenses. Many of the bunkers have been opened to the public as a museum, and others are actually being used as shelters for bats in the wintertime. Then there are the new ones being discovered quite frequently, many of them hidden beneath rubble or dirt for 70 years. Interestingly, after the war, many of the bunkers were plundered for their material, such as wire and wood. And since 2008, local Dutch authorities have been carefully restoring one particular bunker as a special visitor experience, where tourists can actually walk through the underground maze and feel what it would have been like back during the war. To date, there have been dozens of secret underground Nazi bunkers unearthed all over Europe, but the Atlantikwall is one of the richest areas for discovering old artifacts and undisturbed vaults. Number 9. Tombstone in the backyard. A local Jersey woman made a rather spooky discovery in her backyard just a few years ago. As reported by CBS 2, Angela Posey is now terrified to walk through her yard after she discovered an old tombstone on an otherwise perfect Sunday afternoon. Posey rented the home just 3 months before her discovery, and now she's worried what other kind of macabre souvenirs might be back there hidden in the bushes. The tombstone that she found was actually dated October 27, 1900. It's an extremely old tombstone. What's really interesting is that just down the block from Posey's home is a cemetery and a mausoleum. It makes you wonder if maybe over 100 years ago, the cemetery's borders stretched all the way into this woman's backyard. And according to Posey herself, the tombstone was not the only creepy thing she found in her backyard. She actually counted 7 unusual bumps in the ground. She claimed that the bumps looked like the mounds of dirt under which a body could be buried. She's absolutely convinced now that she's living on top of some kind of burial ground. And while it could be that the bumps are just natural or due to someone else's gardening, that's still a pretty creepy thing to find in the backyard of your home. Apparently, the Jersey City Police are going to be bringing sonar equipment to the woman's house to check and see if there are any human remains buried in her yard. And until then, she's just going to have to hold off on any backyard barbecues. Number 8. MiG-21 Fighter. This next one is not really much of a discovery in the traditional sense, but it's still a great story. A British artist buried a MiG-21 fighter jet at the Prague Art Gallery Rudolfinum to celebrate its 100th exhibition. They actually had to unload the dismantled fighter plane from several different trucks and then put it together again just so they could hoist it up with a crane and then lower it into the ground. This was done in front of dozens of onlookers who watched both with a bit of curiosity and disbelief. The whole idea of taking the plane and burying it in the ground came from a British contemporary artist who specializes in sculptures and installations. According to the man himself, it was incredibly difficult to procure the airplane to be buried. While there were lots of military buffs and dealers available to purchase a plane from, almost none of them agreed with the act of actually burying it. But here's where the story is interesting. The whole point of burying the MiG-21 was to symbolize the end of a long and chaotic era. It was a symbolic act of saying goodbye and see you later to the era of development represented by these types of Soviet fighter planes. The MiG-21s have been used in at least 50 different air forces, with over 10,000 being manufactured throughout the years. The MiG-21 is one of the most widely produced supersonic aircrafts ever, and it's a legend from the days of the Cold War. By covering it in dirt, it's a nice way to symbolize that those days of fear and terror are over. Number 7. Underground Society. There's nothing more interesting to find underground than an actual underground society. Police in Moscow discovered what they're referring to as an underground town, housing illegal immigrants from several different countries in Central Asia inside of a bomb shelter from the Soviet era in the western part of the city. And I understand that's a lot to swallow in one sentence. It was certainly a lot to say. Basically, local authorities discovered an underground area guarded by 13-foot-high concrete walls and barbed wire. And inside the underground structure were 110 men and women. They had living areas fitted with bathrooms, they had bedrooms, and they even had prayer rooms. It was a full and complete community structure under the streets of the city, completely unknown to anyone. According to a report from the BBC, the entrance to the underground town was found inside of a derelict factory. The migrants living underneath the factory had been working on producing blades and needles for sewing machines. It was basically an underground sweatshop. In the same area, there's a company which specializes in the production of blades and needles for sewing machines. It's highly likely that the owner of this company had been facilitating the underground society and giving them work to do. The underground inhabitants will now face deportation, and it's been reported that 16 of them will be investigated for criminal activity. And even the owner of the factory under which they were hiding may face criminal action. Number 6. Food on the Underground Railroad. A team of archaeologists working to uncover some of the secrets of the Underground Railroad have made some pretty amazing discoveries. This happened in Maryland, in what was once a very important location for the Underground Railroad. The archaeological investigation involved digging near some cabins that it once housed enslaved people and later free laborers in the late 1800s. What the archaeologists found during the dig shed some light on the daily life and diets of these people. They found things like a children's tea set, a porcelain doll head, some plates, and even a rubber comb. But what's really interesting is all the animal bones they found. They uncovered hundreds of different animal bones under some of the floorboards inside an old cabin and scattered across the yard. Some bones were from pigs, cows, chicken, sheep, fish, rabbits, turtles, possum, raccoon, skunk, turkey, goose, and so much more. These findings show that the enslaved people of the time had to consistently scramble just to supplement their diets with any food available. It also shows a great deal of ingenuity and creativity in the way they fed themselves when there was nothing else around. Perhaps the most surprising one is turtle, but in fact, this was actually quite popular, since people could easily scoop some turtles out of the river to eat. After enslaved people escaped, they often ate these same types of meals. They relied on whatever animals were available, and they used their ingenuity to cook what they could while on the road to the north. Number 5. CRYPTS and the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar is perhaps one of the most interesting groups from the medieval ages. Around the year 1000, when the Christian Crusades were trying to wrestle the Holy Land from Muslim control, the Knights Templar were at the forefront of the battle. These mysterious knights have captivated our imagination for centuries, and even today there are countless movies and TV shows still being made about these people. Some of their churches are also still standing. For example, in many villages across Poland, there are still 13th century Gothic buildings that were created by the Order of the Knights Templar. They constructed these buildings upon their return from the Holy Land as a testament to their lasting influence over the land. But of course, the Knights Templar didn't last forever. But a new archaeological dig at a Knights Templar chapel in a remote Polish village, a place where there are only 100 residents, have offered up some new and exciting discoveries. A research team used special ground-penetrating radar and uncovered secret crypts and secret underground passages underneath of the main structure. According to medieval documents, there was once a well in the area that led down into the secret underground structures below the church. After the excavation, a few interesting pieces of history were found underground, including Bronze Age pottery and the walls from an 18th century distillery. Inside the chapel, the archaeologists found 7 vaulted crypts under the floor, but sadly, there were no Templar bones found inside. Number 4. Roman villa under apartments. Under an apartment block in the capital of Italy, archaeologists uncovered the find of the century. This happened while engineers were trying to earthquake-proof an apartment building in 2014. What they found was a hidden luxury Roman villa, complete with a trove of artifacts that had been hidden for at least 2,000 years. Archaeologists were eventually called in, and a roughly $3 million excavation followed. The archaeologists uncovered a complex of lavish rooms, black and white flooring, and hordes of artifacts. They found things like a hammer, a key, and even a hairpin. But one of the coolest finds were some bowl fragments decorated with images of both Hercules and Athena. According to Forbes, most of these historical remains ranged from between the 8th century BC to the 3rd century AD. How exactly such a luxurious villa from Roman times got built over by an apartment complex is really anyone's guess. But it does appear that there's a whole hidden world underneath Rome just waiting to be found. The hidden villa is actually set to open for public viewing sometime in 2020. Number 3. Prehistoric structures near Stonehenge. If you thought Stonehenge was already a mystery, a recent discovery from 2020 has opened up even more possibilities as to what the origin of Stonehenge really could be. A team of archaeologists from a few different universities uncovered an enormous circle of underground pits near the ancient stones. This new site is just about a mile northeast of Stonehenge, and the researchers believe it dates back nearly 5,000 years. It was in all likelihood the place where the people who built Stonehenge lived and died. Researchers also believe this new site is the key to unlocking the full story behind Stonehenge, the place that has been boggling scientists and promoting conspiracy theories for centuries. In a report published in Science Daily, researchers say the shafts are around 30 feet wide and 15 feet deep, and they surround the lesser-known site of Durrington Walls Henge, which is actually one of Britain's largest monuments. It's also very close to the smaller prehistoric circle at Woodhenge. It looks like the newly discovered circle marks a boundary around these important sites. It could have been a guide that led people to the religious places inside, while acting as a warning not to cross over the boundary. So far, the group of researchers has found about 20 shafts, but they believe there are way more hidden under the ground, creating a ring around Durrington Walls Henge and Woodhenge. Number 2. Underground oceans. We've known for quite some time that there may have been water on Mars millions of years ago, but new data from 2020 is confirming that there is indeed an entire lake sitting under the south pole of Mars. But not only one, there are actually 3 other large lakes under the surface of the planet. In total, researchers believe there are 4 lakes hidden about a mile under the surface of the icy poles on Mars. These lakes are likely full of salt and sediments that allow them to remain liquid even though the temperatures are extremely cold. Researchers are saying that even if these lakes are inhospitable and hold no life, they could still be some of the last remnants of when the red planet had oceans. For those who don't know, Mars is actually covered in lots of signs of erosion, which suggests water once flowed across the entire surface. Of course, the red planet is now dry, but the discovery of these 4 lakes means that water still exists on the planet, even if it is below the ground. And there could be some kind of complex life forms living beneath the soil where we actually can't see them. But of course, we won't know the truth probably for another few hundred years. Number 1. Secret underground temples in Ireland. The final story for today takes us to Northern Ireland, to a place known as the Navan Fort. This fort has been viewed as a sacred site for many thousands of years, but only recently in 2020 have scientists discovered that there could be monumental temples that date back to the Iron Age hidden under the Navan Fort. A new study suggests that the buried structures, captured using remote sensing techniques, were undoubtedly built by humans. They were probably from the Iron Age, and their presence under the ground suggests that the Navan Fort may have been the most important religious center on the Irish island. According to Live Science, the Navan Fort was once the capital of the ancient province of Ulster, which would have been in pre-Christian Ireland. This place is also home to many Irish myths and legends. Navan Fort was used between around 1000 BC to AD 400. When looking from above, you can clearly see that the whole area of Navan Fort is raised above the countryside like on an artificial hill. And now scientists think that underground all that green grass are dozens and dozens of ancient structures that could shed light on how Irish people lived back in the Iron Age. Unfortunately, the only way to find out what's under there is to dig it up. This is basically the Irish equivalent to discovering tombs under the pyramids. What do you think of these incredible underground discoveries? Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and be sure to come back soon for more exciting discoveries.